Tullow's production sharing contracts in Uganda and Ghana are public. Those it has in Kenya, however, are not. Now, with the announcement of plans to start trial runs of oil exports in 2017, the second half of that year, the transparency of deals that Tullow Oil has struck with the Kenyan government is being called into question yet again. Earlier on, I explored the myth of commercial sensitivity around such deals with Charles Wanguhu from the Kenyan civil society platform for oil and gas.
To us, we're also asking why the secrecy? Because same company, Tullow, operating in Ghana, go to their website, their Ghanaian contracts are online. So you just click on the Tullow website and download it. And even the other partner called Cosmos in Uganda, again, go online, you get to their contracts. Some of the Kenyan contracts are also available online. The companies which are registered in the US, because of the disclosure requirements there, have actually disclosed their full production sharing contracts. And if you go online, you'll be able to download some of those contracts. And nothing detrimental has happened. None of those companies are shut down, or because one of the arguments is that these are commercially sensitive. But then for the ones which have been disclosed, nothing has happened to them.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, when they say commercially sensitive, I mean, that sounds like a cover phrase. It's like when governments say, oh, we're shutting XYZ down and we can't reveal XYZ for security reasons. It's just a vague catch-all phrase that actually means nothing.
And that's a problem. Even with our access to information law that's coming through, one of the things, again, they say that can exclude an issue is commercially sensitive. And also in our mining contracts, once it goes to Parliament, the CS can again ask that Parliament does not disclose it because it's commercially sensitive or for national security reasons. So, I mean, these are very vague responses which have not been tested. And for us, the fact that we already have maybe about 10 Kenyan contracts out in public, and none of those companies are suffering any detriments to it, is proof that, I mean, there's nothing commercially sensitive in there.
It sounds like you have a prima facie case here to actually challenge this in courts and say, look, it's a public asset. There's no harm that has, at least based on the experience that we've had with these other 10 companies, there's no harm that can actually be proven by the release of this information. And therefore, in any case, since the Kenyan constitution guarantees freedom of access to information, this data therefore should be public. Litigation
for us, I mean, is a last point. For us, dialogue is very critical, to engage in dialogue. And we have been engaging in dialogues for the last 2 years. And in 2015, actually, the president, while he was on abroad, he got asked a question around disclosure. And one of the things he said, absolutely. Will you be willing to disclose a contract? And said, absolutely. He says that as soon as the law is in place, the petroleum legislation is in place, then the contracts will be public. So we want to at least have access to all these other avenues before we resort to litigation for these contracts.
When I read it, it seems to me the only people who would benefit if this plan is implemented as the broad strokes have been laid out by Tullow and Company would be the truck transporters, the guys who have to move the stuff from Lokicha all the way down to Eldoret, and KPRL, the Kenya Petroleum Refineries Limited, because then they would have all this space available that they could then charge Tullow or whoever money to store their crude oil in. Is that the case? Are these the only parties who are benefiting from this thing?
The trucking companies, definitely. They're the only ones who will be actually making a profit. Everyone else stands, to lose. Even if you look at KPRL, we've just spent $5 million US dollars to buy it off of ESSA, so that now it's a government asset. Which is in the negative. So we're already negative in terms of 500 million shillings. We need another 1.5 billion, or that's what the ministry has said, 1.5 billion to retrofit the refinery to be able to handle our crude, to build a jetty to enable the crude to actually be loaded onto the tankers. So by the end of that, we'll be basically 2 billion in the red, even on the refinery side of things, before we can actually say, oh, somebody will be making money. So the refinery won't be making any money. Only the trucking companies at this point would be making any sort of money.
Okay, so what are the odds, based on the experience we've seen in Uganda? They tried this for better part of 2 years, it went absolutely nowhere. What are the odds that this plan, this early oil production scheme, may also flop in Kenya?
There's a high possibility. In our report, one of the interviews we did with an oil executive, what he mentioned was, you don't truck if you can train, and you don't train if you can pipeline. Right? And that's how you go along the line in terms of the cheapest option for moving crude. Pipeline remains the best option going forward. And we believe that, at some point, sanity will prevail.